The stars vanished. At first, it seemed like a natural occurrence, a sudden cloud cover or the faint haze of Earth's atmosphere thickening. But the truth became clear as the news broadcasts erupted worldwide. Above the planet, blocking the heavens with their cold, metallic enormity, hovered the fleet of the Galactic Empire. The Dominion, their flagship, sat at the vanguard like a vast steel leviathan. It dwarfed the rest of the fleet, its hull bristling with weapons capable of rendering entire cities to ash. Around it, smaller warships swarmed like sharks in an ocean of ink, their predatory formations casting long shadows across the world below. From Earth's surface, the sight was apocalyptic, a storm of metal blotting out the constellations that had guided humanity for millennia. Inside the Dominion's command deck, Admiral Psychor stood with an air of absolute authority. His uniform, adorned with silver and black sigils, gleamed under the cold, sterile lighting. His face was carved from granite, his eyes sharp as blades as they swept over the holographic display of Earth spinning lazily below. "Beautiful," Psychor said, his voice as cold as the void. He rested a gloved hand on the edge of the console, his fingers curling like talons. Such a fragile little jewel, waiting to be plucked. His second-in-command, Captain Orland, hesitated. "Admiral, their response has been unconventional. No transmissions. No attempts at negotiation." Psychor sneered, his expression a mask of contempt. "Silence is the refuge of the weak. They're paralyzed by fear, unable to comprehend the power that hangs over their heads." Orland shifted uneasily but said nothing more. Psychor turned to the communications officer, his voice cutting through the hum of the ship. "Send the ultimatum. All frequencies. Let them understand the stakes." A ripple of tension spread through the command deck as the message was broadcast. It was brief, brutal, and absolute. Surrender your world or face annihilation. Beneath the Rocky Mountains, in the nerve center of Earth's clandestine defense network, Nathan Hale stared at the flickering monitors with a grim expression. The dim lighting of the command bunker cast shadows across his angular features, highlighting the deep furrow in his brow. Around him, the room buzzed with subdued urgency. Technicians worked at terminals, their fingers darting across keyboards. The faint hum of cooling systems blended with the quiet murmur of voices. Despite the activity, there was a heavy stillness in the air, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Nathan's voice broke the silence. "How long until they fire?" General Vera Ashford, standing beside him, crossed her arms. She was shorter than Nathan, but carried herself with a presence that filled the room. Her steely gaze never left the live feed of the Dominion dominating Earth's orbit. "Minutes, hours maybe. They're posturing now, but we both know they didn't come here to negotiate," Vera said. Her voice was low, steady, but there was a razor-sharp edge to it. Nathan nodded, his jaw tightening. "Good. Let them think we're frozen." The words were calm, almost detached, but his mind churned with possibilities. Nathan had always been a strategist, a man who found solace in the cold logic of planning. But now, standing beneath hundreds of tons of rock with the weight of Earth's survival pressing on him, he felt the sting of uncertainty gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. Kieran Falk, Earth's most gifted hacker, slid into a chair nearby, his movements quick and fluid. "Intercepted their broadcast," he announced, his tone carrying a flicker of dark amusement. "Classic Imperial garbage. Submit or perish, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, they need a better copywriter." "Focus," Vera snapped, her gaze flicking to Kieran. "Relax, General," Kieran said, leaning back in his chair. "You'll like this part. We've been piggybacking on their comms network since they arrived. They don't even know we're in their systems yet." Nathan glanced at him. "Can you hold that position?" "Long enough," Kieran replied, his fingers already flying over the keyboard. "And if they find me, I'll make them wish they hadn't." The corner of Nathan's mouth twitched in the ghost of a smile. "Good. We'll need every advantage." A junior officer approached, her expression tight with suppressed fear. "Sir, their message is demanding an immediate response. What should we tell them?" Nathan exchanged a glance with Vera. She gave a curt nod, deferring to him. He turned to the officer, his voice calm but laced with iron. "Send this. Do not cross this line." The officer hesitated for a heartbeat before nodding and rushing off to carry out the order. Vera raised an eyebrow. Not much of a reply. "It doesn't need to be," Nathan said. "They're looking for fear. Let's give them defiance instead." On the Dominion, the response was received with icy silence. Sycor's face darkened as he read the single line of text on the console. For a moment, the hum of the ship's systems was the only sound. "Do not cross this line," Sicor repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. He turned to Orland, his eyes blazing. "They dare to mock us." Orland cleared his throat, his unease evident. "Admiral, it may be a bluff. They've shown no signs of advanced technology, no defenses in orbit. Perhaps—" "Enough!" Sicor barked, his voice like a thunderclap. He stepped forward, his boots striking the deck with measured precision. "Send a scouting fleet. Let's see how long their bravado lasts." A dozen smaller ships broke away from the main fleet, descending toward Earth's atmosphere like sleek metallic falcons. Their mission was simple: probe the planet's defenses and report back. Sicor watched them go with a faint smile, the expression of a predator toying with its prey. But as the scout ships entered Earth's skies, the air itself seemed to rebel. Hidden defense drones, black as the void and nearly invisible to the naked eye, rose from concealed bunkers across the planet. They moved with eerie precision, their weapons blazing to life with lethal accuracy. In moments, the sky was alight with fire. The scout ships twisted and turned, their engines roaring, but the drones moved faster. One by one, the Empire's vessels fell, their shattered remains streaking across the atmosphere like burning meteors. On the Dominion, alarms blared as reports flooded in. "Admiral!" Orland shouted. "We've lost 8 ships. No, 9. They're weapons. They're unlike anything we've seen." Sycor's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white. "Impossible! They're primitives." "Then explain this," Orland snapped, pointing to the holographic display where Earth's drones continued their merciless assault. Sicor stared, his mind racing. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crept into his thoughts. On Earth, Nathan watched the unfolding battle with a grim satisfaction. The flicker of flames reflected in his eyes as he muttered under his breath, "Let them come." The skies burned, and with them, the illusion of Earth's fragility. The battlefield above Earth fell into a momentary stillness, the shattered remains of the Empire's scout ships flickering through the atmosphere like dying embers. The drones, black and precise, retreated into their hidden bunkers, vanishing as swiftly as they had appeared. On board the Dominion, silence rippled across the bridge, not out of reverence, but out of disbelief. Sycor's eyes bore into the holographic display, the charred remnants of his once pristine scouting fleet etched in crimson trails against Earth's spinning orb. "Admiral, the last of the scout ships has been neutralized," Orland reported, his voice measured but strained. Sycor's gloved hand hovered over the console, trembling before curling into a tight fist. "Neutralized?" His voice dripped with venom. "By what? Toy machines? They are insects. Insects. How are they biting back?" No one dared to answer. Below, in the command bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Nathan Hale stood motionless, his gaze locked on the tactical screens. The room hummed with subdued energy, the quiet tick of keyboards and distant murmur of voices forming a backdrop to the unfolding events. A thin sheen of sweat glistened on Nathan's brow, though his posture remained steady, resolute. "Status on the drones?" Nathan asked, his voice a calm ripple cutting through the tension. "Safely returned to base," Kieran Falk replied, his eyes flicking across multiple monitors. His fingers danced over the keyboard, his focus unrelenting. "No losses. We hit them hard and disappeared before they could even track the signal." General Vera Ashford leaned against the console, her arms crossed tightly. "That was their vanguard, Nathan. Their real force is still in orbit. What happens when they start throwing everything they have?" "They will," Nathan said, his voice as steady as iron. "And that's when we'll hit them harder." Vera's eyes narrowed. "With what?" "The drones were a strong opening move, but they'll adapt. We can't rely on them forever." Nathan turned to face her, his sharp features shadowed in the dim light. We don't have to. The Empire thinks they're invincible. Let them keep thinking that. His voice softened, taking on a grim weight. The longer they underestimate us, the better our chances. Vera exhaled sharply, her frustration palpable. You're gambling, Nathan. No, he said. I'm preparing. The words hung in the air like a warning bell, their resonance undeniable. Do we have confirmation on their comms network? Nathan asked, turning to Kieran. The young hacker grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. Oh, I've been busy. Their encryption's good, but not perfect. I've planted a few seeds, false telemetry, decoy signals. If they're looking for us, they'll be chasing shadows. Good, Nathan said. Keep it subtle. Let them think they're the ones finding cracks. Vera stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. You're stalling, Nathan. This isn't just about strategy. It's about time. How long do you think we can keep playing defense before they bring the full weight of their fleet down on us? Nathan met her gaze, his expression unreadable. As long as it takes. Above, the Dominion's bridge had transformed into a hive of activity. Officers scrambled between stations, issuing commands and parsing through conflicting data. The once unshakable arrogance of the Empire was beginning to crack, fractures spreading beneath the surface. Psychor stood in the center, an imposing figure who refused to let doubt seep into his voice. Deploy infiltration pods, he ordered, his tone colder than steel. I want boots on their ground. If they won't reveal themselves, we'll drag them into the light. Orland hesitated. Admiral, are you certain? If their drones are this advanced? They're toys, Psychor spat. Ground warfare is different. Primitive species always think they can hide behind their terrain. Send the squads. Let them show us their teeth. The infiltration pods launched from the Dominion like falling stars, streaking through Earth's atmosphere. Each pod carried elite soldiers, their armor glinting black like obsidian, their weapons bristling with plasma energy. From orbit, they seemed unstoppable, sleek and merciless. But Earth had been waiting. Nathan watched the descent on the holographic display, his sharp eyes scanning every trajectory. Activate Zone 12, he ordered calmly. Within moments, the hidden traps were sprung. As the first pods breached the lower atmosphere, the air around them seemed to ripple, an invisible force bending reality. The pods, equipped with the Empire's most advanced targeting systems, began to spin wildly off course. One after another, they crashed into barren deserts, icy tundras, or dense forests, anywhere but their intended targets. In the command bunker, Vera allowed herself a small, grim smile. EMP mines. Effective, not just mines, Nathan said, nodding toward the display. Localized magnetic disruptions. Each one calibrated to mimic natural interference. They'll think it's a planetary anomaly. And the soldiers that make it through? Vera asked. We're prepared for them, too. In the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, one pod managed to land intact. Its metal hull hissed and groaned as it cooled, steam rising in ghostly tendrils. The door slid open with a mechanical hiss, and a squad of Empire soldiers emerged. Their movements were precise, their plasma rifles raised and scanning the surroundings. The forest, quiet and damp, seemed to watch them, its silence heavy and oppressive. Area secure, the squad leader reported, his voice clipped. Proceeding to objective. They moved through the trees, their boots crunching over leaves and snapping twigs. But the forest was alive in ways they couldn't comprehend. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and faint sounds, barely audible, seemed to echo from every direction. Sergeant, one soldier muttered, his voice tinged with unease. Something's wrong. The sergeant's response was curt. Stay focused. It's just... A flash of movement cut him off. The air filled with a faint hum, almost imperceptible, as cloaked drones emerged from the underbrush. They were small, agile, their sleek forms shimmering as they moved. In an instant, 2 soldiers were down, their weapons disabled by precisely aimed energy bursts. Fall back, the sergeant barked, but the forest offered no retreat. The ground beneath them shifted, revealing hidden pressure plates that triggered bursts of non-lethal gas. The remaining soldiers stumbled, their movements sluggish as the drones encircled them like wolves cornering prey. In the command bunker, Kieran watched the live feed from the drones, a satisfied grin spreading across his face. Textbook, they didn't stand a chance. Nathan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Good. No casualties. We need prisoners. Vera frowned. Prisoners mean interrogation. They'll expect it. Nathan's voice was quiet but firm. That's the point. Let them wonder what we know. Above, on the Dominion, the reports came in, a litany of failure. Psychor's jaw tightened, his composure unraveling. He slammed his fist onto the console, the sound echoing through the tense silence of the bridge. Admiral, Orland said cautiously, their defenses are— Psychor cut him off with a glare that could slice through steel. They're playing games, but they'll learn. Prepare the fleet. This isn't a negotiation anymore. It's war. On Earth, Nathan stared at the holographic map, the faint flicker of the Empire's fleet reflected in his steely gaze. The weight of what lay ahead pressed against him, but he stood unyielding. They're coming, Vera said softly. Nathan nodded. And we'll be ready. Outside, the forest was silent once more, but the air carried the promise of battles yet to come. The sky above Earth remained deceptively calm, the stars once again visible through the thinning remnants of smoke. Yet the atmosphere carried an unnatural weight, like the charged air before a storm. The Galactic Empire's fleet, now gathered in tighter formation, loomed silently in orbit, casting shadows that rippled over the planet's surface. On board the Dominion, Admiral Psychor stood at the heart of the bridge, his figure rigid as stone. His fists clenched behind his back, the fabric of his gloves creaking under the pressure. They mock us, Psychor growled, his voice low but venomous. His gaze bore into the holographic display of Earth, its blue-green surface unyielding. They think their tricks and shadows can shield them forever. Let us see how well they fare when the storm descends. Around him, officers scrambled to obey his commands, the tension in the room thick enough to choke. The Dominion's hum intensified as the fleet prepared for a bombardment. The energy cannons of dozens of warships charging, their lethal glow painting the darkness of space with a cold, pulsing light. In the depths of Earth's command bunker, Nathan Hale's sharp eyes scanned the tactical screens, reading every flicker of data as though deciphering a puzzle only he could see. The air was heavy with the faint tang of ozone, the scent of machinery working tirelessly to keep the operation running. Technicians moved with quiet urgency, their whispers blending into the rhythmic hum of the equipment. They're charging their cannons, Kieran Falk announced from his station, his voice laced with tension. He tapped at his keyboard, the sound of keystrokes rapid and precise. They're not holding back this time. General Vera Ashford leaned over the central console, her jaw set, her breath steady, but shallow. How long until they fire? Nathan didn't look up. His voice was steady, almost unnervingly so. Minutes, maybe less. Do we have countermeasures in place? Vera pressed. Nathan straightened, turning to meet her gaze. Not countermeasures. Deterrence. Vera frowned, her frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. This isn't the time for riddles, Nathan. It's not a riddle, he said, his voice calm but carrying an unshakable weight. If they fire, they'll realize we're more prepared than they ever imagined. But we need them to act first. Her eyes narrowed. You're betting the survival of our cities on a calculated gamble. Nathan stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. It's not a gamble. It's strategy. We have to show them their weapons are useless before they adapt. They've never faced a planet like ours, Vera. If we break their confidence now, we control the tempo of this war. Before she could respond, the room's lighting flickered. A faint vibration pulsed through the floor as the defense grid activated. Nathan turned back to the screens, his jaw tightening. They're firing, Kieran said, his voice hushed but steady. The first salvo erupted from the Empire's fleet, lances of plasma streaking through the void with blinding intensity. The cannons roared in unison, their soundless fury visible only as the glimmer of energy tearing through the vacuum of space. As the projectiles entered Earth's atmosphere, the air around them seemed to shimmer, rippling like heat waves on a desert horizon. And then, one by one, the plasma rounds disintegrated. Each blast dissolved into harmless bursts of light, casting fleeting rainbows across the sky. The defense grid, a web of energy fields powered by ground-based stations, absorbed and neutralized the assault with clinical precision. On the Dominion's bridge, Psychor's expression darkened into something primal. His fingers dug into the edge of the console as he barked, "What is happening?" "They've deployed an atmospheric shield," Orland reported, his voice tight with disbelief. "Our weapons are being neutralized." Psychor's fury erupted like a volcano. "Impossible! No species at their technological level could develop such a defense." But the proof hung in the air like a taunt. Below, Earth stood untouched. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere was electric. Technicians erupted in subdued cheers as the defense grid held, their relief almost palpable. Vera exhaled, a rare flicker of a smile tugging at her lips. "Still think it's a gamble?" Nathan asked, his tone light but his eyes sharp. "It worked," Vera admitted, though her voice was tinged with caution. "But how long can it hold?" "Long enough," Nathan said. He turned to Kieran. "Status on the drones?" "They're ready," Kieran replied, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Just say the word." Nathan nodded, his expression hardening. "Deploy them. Target their navigation systems first. We don't need to destroy their ships, just their confidence." Moments later, Earth's hidden arsenal came to life. Swarms of autonomous drones erupted from concealed silos, black and silent against the night sky. They moved like a living entity, weaving between each other with unnerving precision. Their engines emitted a faint, high-pitched whine, a sound that seemed almost predatory. The drones ascended into orbit, their sleek forms darting toward the Empire's fleet. On the Dominion, alarms blared as sensors detected the incoming swarm. "Drones inbound!" an officer shouted. "Hundreds of them!" "Destroy them!" Psychor bellowed. The fleet responded with a torrent of firepower, beams of energy slicing through the void. But the drones were too fast, too small. They danced between the attacks, their movements unpredictable, their purpose singular. One by one, they closed in on the Empire's ships, targeting engines, communication arrays, and navigation systems. The first to fall was a cruiser, its propulsion system shorting out in a shower of sparks. The ship listed to one side, its lights flickering before it drifted helplessly. Another followed, its weapons silenced as the drones swarmed its hull like wasps around a predator. On the Dominion, the chaos was palpable. Officers shouted over one another, their attempts to counter the attack faltering as the situation spiraled out of control. "They're not destroying us," Orland said, his voice laced with dread. "They're disabling us." Psychor's glare could have melted steel. "Pull back the fleet. Regroup at a safe distance." Reluctantly, the command was carried out. The Empire's ships limped away from Earth, their once formidable formation shattered. In the bunker, Nathan watched the retreat with a grim satisfaction. The room buzzed with muted celebration, but he remained still, his focus unbroken. "They'll be back," Vera said, her voice quiet. Nathan nodded. "Of course they will, and next time, they won't underestimate us." Kieran leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "They're scared. You can see it in the way they're running." "They're not scared," Nathan corrected. "They're angry, and anger makes people dangerous." Vera crossed her arms, her gaze lingering on the tactical display. "So what's the plan when they come back with reinforcements?" Nathan's eyes darkened, his voice steady, but cold. "We give them a reason to regret it." Above, the stars seemed to burn brighter as though daring the Empire to return. But Earth's defenses were just beginning to reveal their secrets, and Nathan knew that the war was far from over. The stars above Earth glittered with a deceptive calm, but Nathan Hale's thoughts were far from tranquil. In the subterranean command bunker, the air was thick with tension, the hum of machinery blending with the muted voices of technicians. Despite the apparent victory, the scent of stale coffee and warm electronics lingered, clinging to the walls like the unease gripping every soul within. The Empire's retreat was not a surrender. It was a recalibration. Nathan's sharp eyes scanned the monitors, tracing the trajectory of the limping Imperial fleet as it withdrew beyond Earth's defense grid. They were regrouping, gathering reinforcements. He knew it wasn't over. It was merely a prelude to a larger storm. General Vera Ashford stood beside him, her fingers drumming on the edge of the console. "They're coming back," she said, her voice low and edged with concern. Nathan nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Of course they are, and this time they'll bring everything." The screen flickered, a stark reminder of Earth's vulnerability. Despite their technological advancements and tactical ingenuity, they were playing a game against an opponent who had the resources to wage wars across galaxies. Nathan's mind churned with possibilities, weighing risks against rewards. Every move had to be deliberate, every counterattack decisive. "They're consolidating near the Lagrange point," Kieran Falk interrupted, swiveling in his chair. The glow of his monitors painted his face in shades of blue and green. "Looks like they're waiting for reinforcements before they push again." "How long do we have?" Vera asked. "Maybe hours. A day if we're lucky," Kieran replied. "They're trying to play it smart now." Nathan's jaw tightened. "That's their first mistake. They're giving us time." He straightened, his sharp silhouette cutting through the dim light of the bunker. "We can't wait for them to strike first. This is our chance to hit them while they're regrouping." Vera raised an eyebrow. "You want to take the fight to them?" "Not just take the fight to them," Nathan said. "We cripple them before they have a chance to bring reinforcements. We turn their caution into chaos." Kieran's grin spread wide. "I like the sound of that. What's the play?" Nathan pointed to the tactical map. "We deploy the fleet, not all of it, just enough to keep them focused on a single front. Meanwhile, we use the drones to target their support vessels, the fuel carriers, the comm relays. If they can't coordinate or resupply, they're dead in the water." Vera crossed her arms, skepticism etched on her face. "And the fleet?" "You're risking lives, Nathan." "They'll be bait," he admitted, his tone steely, "but controlled bait. We won't engage directly. We'll use decoys to lure their main force into a kill zone." "And if they see through it?" Vera pressed. Nathan's gaze hardened. "Then we adapt. But the Empire thrives on predictability. We've already proven we're anything but." The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling like a heavy mist. Slowly, Vera nodded. "All right, let's do it." Nathan turned to Kieran. "Start scrambling their sensors. I want them blind by the time our fleet moves." Kieran cracked his knuckles. "Consider it done." High above Earth, the secret fleet began its ascent. Hidden on the dark side of the moon, these ships had been built in silence, their construction shielded from prying eyes. Unlike the Empire's sleek and intimidating designs, Earth's vessels were rugged, practical, and bristling with weaponry. They weren't built to intimidate. They were built to survive. The Resolute Dawn, Earth's flagship, led the charge. Its hull gleamed dully in the faint light, its engines roaring to life with a sound that reverberated through the vacuum. Smaller ships followed in formation, their movements precise and deliberate, like pieces on a chessboard. Inside the Resolute Dawn, Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge, his posture as unyielding as the ship itself. A seasoned veteran, Elias was no stranger to conflict, but the enormity of their mission pressed heavily on his shoulders. His hand rested on the console as he surveyed the fleet. "Comms are online," his XO reported. "Fleet is holding formation." Elias nodded. "Good. Let's give the Admiral something to worry about." The fleet surged forward, a spear aimed at the heart of the Empire's staging ground. As they approached, Earth's drones activated in tandem, their black forms streaking toward the support vessels like a swarm of angry hornets. On board the Dominion, chaos erupted as alarms blared. Psychor stormed onto the bridge, his expression a mask of fury. "What's happening?" he demanded. "Drones incoming!" an officer shouted. "They're targeting our supply lines!" Psychor's eyes burned with rage as he turned to the tactical display. The drones were relentless, darting between ships with impossible speed. Fuel carriers exploded in bursts of flame, their destruction lighting up the void. Communication relays sparked and died, plunging parts of the fleet into disarray. "Deploy interceptors!" Psychor bellowed. "Stop those drones!" As the Dominion's smaller fighters scrambled, The Resolute Dawn and its fleet moved into position. They launched a salvo of missiles, each one finding its mark with surgical precision. Imperial cruisers buckled under the assault, their hulls splitting like ripe fruit. Psychor clenched his fists. "This isn't a counterattack," he hissed. "It's a trap. Admiral, their fleet is closing in," Orland shouted. Psychor's mind raced. The humans were forcing his hand, dragging him into a battle he hadn't prepared for. But retreating now would mean losing the momentum and his reputation. With a growl, he slammed his fist onto the console. "All ships engage! Crush them!" The battle erupted in full force, a maelstrom of fire and metal. Energy blasts streaked across the void, illuminating the darkness in bursts of blue and white. The Resolute Dawn weaved through the chaos, its railguns firing with unerring precision. Smaller Earth vessels darted around Imperial cruisers, exploiting weaknesses and sowing confusion. On the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Elias barked orders with the precision of a surgeon. "Focus fire on their flanks! Keep them off balance!" A sudden jolt rocked the ship as an Imperial blast grazed the hull. Sparks rained down from the ceiling, the acrid scent of burning wires filling the air. Elias gritted his teeth, his hands tightening around the console. "Damage report," he barked. "Minimal," his XO replied. "Shields are holding." "Good," Elias said. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with determination. "Let's finish this." In the command bunker, Nathan watched the battle unfold with an intensity that bordered on predatory. Every maneuver, every explosion, was a calculated step toward victory. But he knew the fight was far from over. "They'll realize it's a feint," Vera said, her voice low. "They will," Nathan agreed, "but by then, it'll be too late." As the drones continued their assault, Earth's fleet began to retreat, luring the Empire's ships into a carefully laid trap. Hidden mines, cloaked in the darkness of space, activated in unison. The resulting detonations tore through the Imperial formation, leaving ships adrift and vulnerable. On the Dominion, Psychor's fury reached a boiling point. "Pull back," he roared. "Regroup now!" The Empire's fleet faltered, its cohesion unraveling. Nathan leaned forward, his voice a quiet rumble. "Now we show them what it means to fight on our terms." As the Resolute Dawn and its fleet vanished into the shadows, the Empire was left reeling. The trap had been sprung, but Nathan knew the real test was yet to come. The storm was far from over. In the dark void of space, the remnants of the Galactic Empire's fleet drifted like wounded predators, their formation fractured, their pride bloodied. Fires burned in the hulls of some ships, oxygen venting into the vacuum as emergency lights blinked like dying stars. The Dominion, scarred but defiant, stood at the center of the chaos, its shadow still vast, still menacing. Admiral Psychor paced the bridge like a caged beast. The damage reports piled up in front of him, each one another blow to his carefully cultivated image of invincibility. His officers avoided his gaze, their fear palpable in the air, thick with the scent of overheating consoles and scorched wiring. "Admiral," Orland ventured cautiously, his voice breaking the tense silence, "the reinforcements are still hours away. The fleet, what remains of it, can barely hold formation. We need to retreat." "Retreat?" Psychor turned on him, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. "And admit to the galaxy that the great Empire was outmaneuvered by primitives? Number we will not run." "But they've outplayed us at every turn," Orland pressed. "They're not the prey we thought they were. This isn't—" Psychor's hand slammed against the console, the sound reverberating through the bridge. "They are prey. They are insects, and I will crush them beneath my boot." Before Orland could respond, a sensor officer spoke, her voice trembling. "Admiral, we're detecting a new fleet, approaching from the far side of the moon." Psychor's head snapped toward the holographic display. There, cutting through the void with deadly purpose, was Earth's hidden fleet. Larger than before, reinforced, and bristling with weaponry, it advanced like the blade of a guillotine. "They had more," Psychor murmured, his voice low, almost disbelieving. For the first time, doubt cracked through the armor of his arrogance. On board the Resolute Dawn, Captain Elias Ward stood at the command console, his presence steady as the ship hummed with restrained power. The fleet's engines roared, their vibrations reverberating through the hull like the drumbeat of war. The bridge smelled of ozone and steel, a sharp tang that sharpened every nerve. "Fleet is in position," his XO reported, her voice steady but laced with anticipation. "Awaiting your command." Elias nodded, his gaze fixed on the Dominion. "This is it. No second chances. Bring us within striking range and prepare all weapons." A transmission crackled through the comms. Nathan Hale's voice calm, but heavy with intent. "Captain, are your crews ready?" "We've been ready since they crossed into our skies," Elias replied, his tone edged with steel. "Let's end this." Nathan's response was quiet, but carried a weight that filled the room. "Make them understand what happens when they underestimate us." Elias turned to his crew, his voice rising with authority. "All hands, battle stations. This is for Earth. No hesitation, no mercy." The fleet surged forward, their engines roaring like thunder in the vacuum of space. Railguns charged, missile bays opened, and energy cannons glowed with lethal light. The Resolute Dawn led the charge, its hull gleaming like a sword unsheathed. On the Dominion, Psychor's rage reached a fever pitch. "Engage! Destroy them all! Show them the might of the Empire!" The battle that followed was a symphony of chaos and destruction. Energy beams lit up the void, their brilliance blinding against the darkness. Explosions rippled through the Imperial fleet as Earth's forces struck with precision, each move calculated, each strike decisive. Inside the Resolute Dawn, the deck trembled as railguns fired in rapid succession. The recoil reverberated through the ship, a deep, guttural roar that echoed in Elias's chest. Sparks rained from overhead as enemy fire grazed the hull, the acrid scent of burning circuits filling the air. "Shields holding at 70%, the XO reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Keep them up," Elias commanded. "Target their flagship. I want the Dominion crippled." The Resolute Dawn's main cannon powered up, its energy readings spiking. The glow from the weapon bathed the bridge in fiery red, casting long shadows that flickered like ghosts. Elias's hand hovered over the firing controls. "Do it," Nathan's voice cut through the comms. "Send them a message they'll never forget." Elias pressed the trigger, and the cannon roared to life. A searing beam of energy lanced through the void, striking the Dominion with pinpoint accuracy. The Imperial flagship shuddered, its hull groaning as explosions ripped through its structure. On the Dominion's bridge, Psychor staggered, gripping the console as the ship trembled beneath him. Smoke filled the air, acrid and choking, as alarms blared incessantly. His officers shouted over one another, their panic palpable. "Admiral, we've lost primary weapons and navigation," Orland shouted. "The fleet is in disarray." Psychor's voice was a guttural snarl. "We are not finished. Before he could finish, the comms crackled to life. A transmission from Earth, its tone calm and unyielding. Nathan Hale's voice filled the bridge, each word a dagger to Psychor's pride. "This is Nathan Hale, acting commander of Earth's Defense Force. You came to our world with arrogance and firepower, believing you could take what you wanted without resistance. You were wrong." Psychor's knuckles whitened as he gripped the console, his breathing ragged. "Your empire thrives on fear," Nathan continued. "But fear won't break us. You've underestimated us at every turn, and now you're paying the price. Withdraw your fleet and carry this message to your emperor. Earth is not your colony. Earth is not your prey. Cross us again, and you will regret it." The transmission ended, leaving the Dominion's bridge in suffocating silence. Psychor stared at the display of his crippled fleet, his arrogance crushed beneath the weight of undeniable defeat. "Admiral," Orland ventured, his voice hesitant but firm, "we have to fall back. If we stay—" "Do it!" Psychor spat, his voice hoarse with rage. "Order the retreat!" The surviving Imperial ships turned, their engines flaring weakly as they limped away. Earth's fleet held position, watching as the once mighty force retreated into the void. On board the Resolute Dawn, cheers erupted across the bridge, but Elias remained stoic, his gaze fixed on the shrinking silhouettes of the enemy ships. In the command bunker, Nathan leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Vera stood beside him, her arms crossed. "We won," she said, though her voice carried a note of caution. "For now," Nathan replied, "but they'll be back." Vera frowned. "And when they do?" Nathan's gaze hardened, his voice steady but unyielding. "Then we'll be waiting." Above, the stars shone brighter than before, their light unbroken by shadows. Earth had made its stand, and the galaxy would remember the warning etched into the void. "Cross us at your peril."